Okay, good. Wait, start over. I'm sorry.
Hi. Thank you, and welcome to another episode of Gabe and Zav's Film Review Show, My Dinner with Gabe, episode 7.
I can't do it all.
We are changing things up a little bit today, and in that we are going back to the original format of how we started this, and it's going to be Zav and I today, no guest.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be fun. So, today we are reviewing Men in Black 3 and Blank City, which is an independent film which was released in 2010, which is just recently. I've been hearing a lot about this movie from a lot of people that have seen this and been watching this. It's available on Netflix. It's also available in the store at River West Film and Video. A lot of people have been talking about this. 3 people told me about this film before I watched it. It's about the underground film movement, the No Wave film movement in the 80s in New York. We'll be reviewing that. Let's start things off first. I will be doing my film news and box office news. So, that being said, here's your box office for...
Do you want me to give to make that beatbox noise while you do it? But you can't do the
I know.
news
I can't do
well.
both. I'm not Razel.
Do you want me to do it?
Do something. I wish you had a sitar in here.
I can't do it.
There, it's fine.
If I had a sitar.
Normally we do music behind our... we have Tom... We normally do Tom Foss's recordings behind my movie news, but we cannot find the CD today. So, box office for your 4-day weekend, even though I'm only going to be reporting primarily... My right channel's out, Zav. Even though I'm only going to be reporting on your news from May 25th through the 27th. Number 1 was Men in Black, which opened up with $54.5 million. Not a huge opening, not a small opening. The Avengers stayed second with 36.6 4-week total, 513.3. Huge numbers. Battleship was third, sinking even lower with second week, bringing it to 44.5. Huge disappointment for Universal Pictures. The Dictator was fourth, 9.2 million. Second week total, 41.1. Chernobyl Diaries opened with a thud, 7.9. The found footage horror film did not surprise anyone. It wasn't screened for critics the weekend that it was opened, and it showed. I think even the lamest of horror fans were not really excited for this one. Dark Shadows, third week, 7.5 million, bringing it up to 62.9. Big disappointment for Warner Brothers for the $150 million budgeted film. Seventh was What to Expect When You're Expecting, $7.1 million. Second week total, 22.1. Best Exotic Marigold Hotel was eighth, going up 97%. This is the sleeper hit of the year so far. Fox Searchlight is very proud of this movie, and they did an incredible marketing campaign, an incredible distribution campaign with this movie. The American Beauty technique of releasing it in a few theaters and little by little branching it out and doing the limited release correctly, doing it the right way with a movie that they have faith in, that they know is good. 6.3 million, fourth week total, 16.5. Hunger Games was ninth, 2.3 million, 10-week total, 395.3. Big numbers for Lionsgate. 10th was Think Like a Man, 1.4 million, 6-week total, 88.3. Men in Black 3 is finally the movie to dethrone the Avengers from atop its mighty perch. 4-day total was 69.3. Weekend was third for Will Smith, behind I Am Legend, which was a 77 million, and Hancock, which was 62 million. Second highest fourth weekend ever for the Avengers, behind Avatar, which it seems to be setting every record behind Avatar's the second biggest, the second best weekend, the second fastest. However, it does have the new record for crossing $500 million in 23 days. That stands alone. It passed The Dark Knight a few days ago, and it is now the third highest grossing film of all time. However, not such good news for The Dictator, Baron Cohen. It is the lowest grossing within the time frame permitted so far film that he has released.
It has good previews, though.
It is a funny looking movie, but what I've heard from
somehow
people,
watching the preview, you can kind of tell it's not going to be that great.
well, and what I've heard from people firsthand and what I've read is that there's long stretches in the film that are incredibly boring and unfunny and mean-spirited. And granted that there's a lot of good-natured humor poked at feminists in the film. I've heard that the film is awkward. It just isn't as cohesive as his last two efforts. And Bruno was already kind of a stretch for a huge portion of it. Opening today, the 1st of June. It is National Donut Day. For Greater Glory, which is about the Cristero War from 1926 to 1929, which was a Mexican Catholic war in which Catholics took arms against their anti-clerical Mexican government. This is a somewhat religiously made film and focused film, and it does not help it from what I've been reading. Bloated mess, sentimental, lazy, full of scenery that isn't even that pretty. Andy Garcia picture, which is starting to become a more bloated and sentimental name than Cuba Gooding Jr., and not in a good way. High School is opening up. I am really looking forward to this movie. I think it's going to be the funniest stoner comedy made in years. This is already...
But what can they really call a movie High School at this
High school,
point?
yeah. High, like getting high school. That's the connotation of it.
That doesn't already exist? Oh, there was one called High School High.
High School Musical and High School High.
High School High.
Yep. Colin Hanks, Adrian Brody. Adrian Brody plays a hilarious foreign, I believe he's Armenian drug dealer who's tattooed from head to toe and is just completely insane. It looks really funny. It's a contrived film. I'm sure that not every joke in it's going to work. And for people that don't like stoner comedies, stay away. Who cares? No one cares. Funny but uneven, but by most regards a stoner classic. If you can quote Half Baked or Up in Smoke, you'll probably like this movie and you should go see it. I'm going to go see it. The plot is that a valedictorian gets high with an old buddy days before graduation. And just as their school is represented by a spelling bee champion who pukes at a national spelling bee because he's high at the time, the principal, Michael Chiklis of the commish and of the commish fame, starts a mandatory drug testing policy. So the two boys decide to save the day by making a special batch of brownies for everyone at the school to eat during the bake sale, assuming of course that everyone's going to eat brownies. For some reason everyone at the school just loves brownies, so it's a kind of a contrived plot device, but it's supposed to be really, really funny. There's a good trailer for this available that I've been looking forward to this for 2 months now. Snow White and the Huntsman, the big major super duper Cooper release of the week. Hopefully they were trying to get every woman and man in this country in to see this movie. Lots of cross marketing to men and women. However, what the tallies are saying, not very good reviews. Over long, over serious. Narrative with all its elements and reworkings feels very secondary to the atmosphere and appearance of the film. Reviews haven't been terrible, 2.5 stars for the most part, but they just say the movie is tedious, it's long, there's huge stretches of it that are unnecessary, and the whole film feels a little unnecessary in the end. It's a great idea, a very, very, very dark, very somber reworking of the Snow White legend, but in the end the special effects feel just a little unnecessary, and the whole thing ends up feeling a little unnecessary and a little bit too based on posturing and posing. Kristen Stewart can't get out of her Twilight mode. She stares at things instead of acts. She says things with a whisper instead of actually acting. She even said recently in a interview that I read that she had a hard time getting into Braveheart mode, as she called it. I'm not even kidding. She called it Braveheart mode. She doesn't know how to act. She doesn't know how to act. I don't know why they assumed that her being in a movie is going to draw lots of people. Maybe it will. Maybe it will. Maybe I'm crazy and I know nothing about the movie. I think it's going to be a somewhat uneven flop. I think this movie is not going to be the big film that the studio was hoping it was going to be. However, there's a lot of women out there that want to see this, and there's guys that I know who want to see this movie too. Lavish visuals, spectacle over the top, not enough to mask vain attempts at girl-guy cross-marketing for maximum profit. Every feminine insecurity and dream is made along the way. News. George Lucas is retiring, and he's been talking about this for years. He's been rumored. This has been rumored for years. He's been throwing this around. He's doing it. Kathleen Kennedy, Steven Spielberg's longtime producing partner and friend and business partner, is stepping on as the co-chair of Lucasfilm Incorporated.
Oh,
this is a huge thing. This
so
is
he's not quitting making movies.
Yes, he's retiring
forever.
He's retiring. He's
Really?
retiring.
Wow. Okay.
George Lucas is tired of having to deal with the movie industry and the business. And he's
that's
rich.
so weird.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know. He's just
I
done.
just
He's
can't
had enough.
imagine being a filmmaker and wanting to quit. That's like
He's not a
that's like a
filmmaker
jazz
anymore.
musician saying I'm quitting,
He
retiring from jazz.
doesn't
music.
really make films anymore. He makes video games at this point. I mean, the guy just he's run so dry on new ideas that he and Spielberg have just been retooling their old films and sort of trying to make, do the best that they can with what they have. Spielberg's even been producing more than directing, and like we did on our Spielberg show, we talked about his producing efforts, his directing efforts, which have been a little lackluster of late. And I think Lucas is just realizing maybe that his film school days are over. I think Coppola should realize that too, because his recent films have sucked a lot. Youth Without Youth.
I think that's just something that happens as people get older in general, as creativity dries up as you get older in certain ways. But in other ways,
maybe
doesn't.
Maybe Coppola should hunker up in a van and use his magic powder to rekindle some of that old magic.
Well,
I'm kidding.
He's
I'm
making
totally kidding.
wine. He's got his vineyard going.
Yeah, that's amazing that a man with money can make of it. Anyway, I'm not impressed by that at all. Joe Esterhaas is penning Heaven and Mel, which is going to be a huge best-selling tell-all about his relationship and about Mel Gibson's fall from grace and succumbing to his demons. Once the superstar of film and directing has fallen on hard times, and this book is going to profit off of it. I love Joe Esterhaas, however. I'm reading his memoir right now, and it's one of the most entertaining books I've ever read. Hollywood Animal. Guy Ritchie to direct Treasure Island for Warner Brothers. Yeah, we'll see what he does with that. We saw what he did with the Sherlock Holmes films. Some people loved it. Some people did not love what he did with that. He's going to do the exact same thing to Treasure Island. So flashy visuals, fast pace, lots of explosions, I'm sure. Because there's so many explosions in Robert Louis Stevenson's work and so many explosions in Arthur Conan Doyle works. Anyway, I'm done. I'm done being critical. That's your movie box office news for today.
I'm always critical.
I know.
I'm never done being critical.
And I love it.
So
today our show is
Men in Black 3
and
Blank City.
Yep. Which both of these films are specifically have themes in them or are about themes that are going to be the two themes of our show today. One is time travel. The other is the no wave film movement in New York City in the 1980s, which Zav knows more about than I do, but I find infinitely interesting and reminds me of Film 101 in the first year of film school with Bogey, Carl Bogner, who's been on the show twice, ranting off about a bunch of films that most of the people in the class would never watch and did never watch and would not watch and still have not watched, lest he show them on the big screen and go on a 10-minute tangent afterwards.
Yeah, well, that's one of the good things about film school or art school is being exposed to what is out there, what exists already. That's a big part of it.
It was.
You can't really teach a person to be an artist. You can't teach a person to be creative. I guess you can show them by example, but generally speaking, people the thing that you get the most out of film school or art school is the connections that you make with other artists and having a space and time to work, getting access to equipment, and then access to the history of the stuff and what's out there. Those are the things that can actually be beneficial to an artist.
I absolutely
and of course it's a privileged thing. You have to have money to go to film school, and you have to have money to go to art school, or else you have to rack up student loans. And so I don't know. I'm just going off on a tangent there, but
it's okay.
That's one of the great things about a film school, and you can't expect people to know. I didn't. There's a lot of things that now I cherish, but I would have never known.
I never would have known about
if
any
I had
of that
not
stuff. Yeah.
gotten involved in if I had not gone to attended certain lectures and so on. And some of it is does kind of make you into kind of another person who went to film school, or just another person who went to art school. But then some of it is also genuinely like transformative, as important as any religious experience to experience certain kinds of filmmaking. I encountered the No Wave. Well, basically, Blank City. Should we talk about Blank City first, or should we talk about?
Sure. I would just like to say
Men in
first
Black?
that in no way do I mean anything critical about the UWM Film School, because I cherished every single movie that was ever shown in that program, even ones that I didn't like. They completely opened my eyes to different ways of filmmaking and looking at films, especially since most of the movies that were shown there were made before computer technology was even available to alter the look of a film. So,
well, one of the things that I could say about the about the UWM film department is that it is a very specific type of film school, and I think that most people approach film school thinking, "Oh, I'm going to learn how to make movies like the movies I see at home," and students need to realize, and whatever people who are making choices about their future or whatever, is if you really want to be a filmmaker, if you want to be a filmmaker like what you see in the movie theater, or if you want to make the kinds of film that you see in on TV and so on, it's a trade and it's a craft, and you can easily get involved and save a lot of money by just going straight into the industry and being an intern and working for, move to Hollywood. I would always tell students, if that's what you want to do, if you just want to be a part of the industry, of the film industry, then move to Hollywood and be an intern and slowly climb up the ladder. It doesn't cost you any student loans to be an intern. It's free. So, if you want to go about it, if you want to learn the industrial filmmaking methodology, the best way to do it is to actually go there and be a part of it. But the drawback of that is you will just become, or most likely, you'll just become a part of an industry. You'll be, like a line worker in a factory, and you'll get good at that one part of that factory, and that will be your career. Like, for example, you might be a set designer and work in the set design field. On the other hand, if you are a person who wants to express yourself and you want to talk, you want to make your vision, bring your vision onto the screen, then there's a cost to that. It's not free. And the way that you do it is to strike out on your own and take the risks and probably not be successful in the traditional sense. But, and I am getting to Blank City. This is what Blank City is all about, is people who just decided they want to express themselves and they want to do it now. They don't want to be a cog in the machinery. They don't want to be support mechanism for someone else's ideology. They don't want to just maintain the status quo as part of an industry. They want to express their experience in life. And that's what these filmmakers did. In fact, they reject film school because what they did is they just went ahead and did it. They go beyond that. They don't
with very little training.
They didn't waste their time with film school. They went straight into the process. So this film, Blank City, is all about an era, basically late 70s, early 80s, It's the beginning of punk, the beginning of rap and hip hop, and it's when New York City was, a place that people were afraid to go to, that was rat infested, with burned out buildings, and it's about this sort of what would you call it? School of filmmakers or artists and musicians.
A collective.
Not a. Collective sounds very like intentional. It was not an intentional collective.
I'd say it was just something that just kind of happened. It was an accident, to be honest, because a lot of these guys had no intention of making movies that were going to be like this huge foundation for years to come. These sort of idolized art house pieces. They just literally wanted to make movies, and they had no money to make movies, and so they around the fact that, and the movie explores that too, the fact that they had no money, they had no resources, they had cameras, and they had a bunch of people, and they had a lot of drugs. And with that fuel, they went out and they made movies. They had to, and they talk about the punk ideology that was kind of ruling behind the no wave movement, was that a lot of times they had to steal equipment, they had to steal resources, and they had to steal. They had to lie, cheat, and sort of burn their way into shooting locations. They had no permits. And just to edit their movies, a lot of times they had to sneak into places and pretend and have fake IDs or have sort of fake credentials in order to use equipment, and then get the hell out of there as fast as they could, and sort of laugh about it and high five and just like, oh my God, I can't believe. And what a lot of them say about it is, it happened so quickly, we didn't even realize what we were, like, how important or how amazing what we were doing really was, until it was just like kind of like, oh my God, like what we're doing is really pertinent and other people are following our example. Yes
and no. I mean, I think that first of all, this film is the first codification of this canon of cinema that I've seen in motion picture form. It's probably, I mean, I was privy to this, if you want to call it privy. I was tuned into this world of this world in the early years of my Gabe is leaving. He's walking away. He has to go pee. I'm going to talk by myself. Okay, this is kind of awkward. I'm not going to talk to myself. I can't do it. I'm going to wait for Gabe. Gabe is peeing right now. He walked away. I can't have a discussion by myself about this film. It's not going to happen, Gabe. You have to come back here. I'm not going to do this alone.
Yeah.
I have to talk to a human being.
How many discs are there?
It's not going to happen.
Okay. You guys don't rent it out as a whole series anymore, or as a whole? Oh, okay.
Ballfinger has a board. A white board. He's making faces.
I'm back.
Okay, Gabe is back.
Hello.
I didn't talk at all while you left. I can't talk about it myself.
Oh,
I'm not
I'm
going
sorry.
to talk to myself about this.
Oh, is Finger here? Did I just hear Paul Finger screaming?
Yes. We're not going to have Paul Finger on the show.
Because Paul is crazy, and I love when he rants about movies, because he's the only person I know that can speak about movies faster than I can.
Yeah.
It's pretty okay. And anyway, so what I think is amazing is that recently I saw a collection of films that you and your brother and Peter made at the Pink House, and it was a video DJ and a video editing sort of comminglization and showcase of a lot of video works that you guys had made in the past and other films that you guys had made. And I got to say that there's a lot of and you mentioned that a lot of the inspiration for those films directly came from a lot of the movies that were shown in Blank City, of which some of the filmmakers listed that were interviewed and shown in this movie are...
Well, let's not... I don't want to list off just like lists of names, Gabe, because first of all, that's not actually the case. I was going to say this is the first time I've seen this kind of filmmaking codified in the sort of as a movement of film. I have not seen that until this film, which actually was made by a filmmaker who had never seen these films. She wasn't even aware of these films until recently when she saw a retrospective of them in Paris. She's from Paris, and so it's kind of interesting to see that it took a person from a different generation who had not grown up watching this stuff, didn't know any of these films, to make this film about these films. When I was younger, I saw or first heard about Richard Kern and Nick Zed at the UWM Film Department, and it was through my friend Jamie Patton, who somehow got tuned into this movement that was happening, and also Julian, I forget Julian's last name. They're the people who brought it in. Not that it wasn't the professors, but it was these undergrad students who brought in these filmmakers, and they brought them into town to show their work. And I did not go to the screening, so I didn't see their work. In addition to that, the director of Blank City specifically talks about it. She said that most of these films, I mean, yes, Nick Zed you can find on DVD. You can find the Cinema, S-I-N, Cinema of Nick Zed on DVD. You can find Richard Kern's Hardcore, and he also has another DVD of his work that's out. And Amos Poe, The Foreigners is available on DVD. And then I forget the name of the feminist film that was made, which I didn't like as much, by that woman.
Vivian Dick? Is that who you...
Vivian... Maybe
Vivian Dick made a number of films with Lydia Lunch at the same time that Richard Kern was making films with her, and she had her gun already.
And then the other one is the hip hop film
Wild Style. Which was huge.
I wasn't aware. Ahern is I forget his first name. He made Wild Style, which I really like a lot. In fact, I would say Wild Style might be one of my favorites of all of those, but it's different. It's a different kind of film. What I was going to say is, you were Gabe, you were saying, oh yeah, these films are all these inspirational films that like inspired people, and it's had so much influence on our culture. And the truth is that the majority of the films in Blank City have never been screened since the time when they came out, and are almost impossible to get a hold of. So and she talks about that in her commentary that the majority of these films have never been seen until now. Until this DVD came out, so they haven't had an influence on people's filmmaking. Certainly not mine.
I would say recently, within the last 7 years, like since Richard Kern was released on DVD, because I was shown a lot of these movies in film school, and I also rented a lot of them from the video store. So I don't mean like throughout the 80s or the 90s. I mean like as of the DVD age.
No, I'm saying as of today, the majority of the films that you will see in Blank City referred to in Blank City, you will not see anywhere. They're not available. She specifically said
that's true. Besides the highlights,
she said that she hopes that will cause someone to bring them out on DVD. So a lot of this stuff has never been seen before. It's the energy, it's the atmosphere.
I would agree with that.
That was influencing people, and of course, I was influenced. I was definitely very influenced by it as a filmmaker myself when I was at that point in my life. But it was more about the energy.
Yeah.
And the nature of the work, which was doing it without any money, making that be part of the filmmaking in a way that the fact that you have it's resourcefulness. It's like you use the fact that you don't have money as a character a characteristic in the work itself, and that speaks to the work. So like things look gritty. Well, things are gritty because you don't have much money and you're like working with nothing, that becomes part of the energy of the filmmaking. The same could be said about John Waters' early films. It's the grittiness, the kind of that almost like softcore porn feel of John Waters' early films is what kind of informs the work. Or I hate using that word, but like it speaks to the work. It actually adds a kind of vibe to it. Just like when we were talking about horror, low budget horror film, low budget and horror go well together because there's something a little creepy about low budget filmmaking. It's not as smooth. It's not as comfortable to the viewer. It makes the viewer it's a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
So then if you're going to make a low budget film, make a low budget horror. Making a low budget horror goes well hand in hand with the fact that you don't have much of a budget.
That's really true.
You know what I'm saying? When something's really high budget horror can also be horrifying, but in some ways, low budget horror is more horrifying because of the fact that it's like edgy. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know. I don't know. You kind of it just has a vibe to it that's creepy. It's got a creepy vibe. Even in an industrial film about how to repair a factory machine has a creepy vibe to it because it's just low budget and the acting is kind of lo-fi and the camera work is lo-fi. Somehow that works it doesn't work in favor of the industrial film, but it works in favor of a film like a Nick Zed film or a Lydia Lunch film. So anyway, yes, I personally was influenced by this kind of cinema. At the same time, I'm not really one of those people. I'm not a person who is like, I would have never made a film that was as sexually explicit because it's just not I don't have that same kind of confidence that those filmmakers have in that world. And then also in terms of the disenchantment with society, like I never really related to the whole punk rock aesthetic because I wasn't coming from a broken home where I hated my parents or my parents made me miserable. And so then Paul Finger is like inserting himself into the whole. Do you want to talk? I mean,
it was really bizarre.
No, I'm not here.
That was really bizarre. I really
did. Were you around when the Nick Zed and
Yeah, when he played
Richard Kern? Were you here in town at the time?
About Richard Kern.
Can you? Okay, so you are qualified to talk about this.
Just try not to use any profanity.
What the fuck?
Because we want to air these again later.
Oh, okay. We'll edit that.
But do tell the story about what Richard Kern said when is that on? Is that mic on?
We have Paul Finger. He's also old like me.
So
Not this Paul Finger.
Paul Finger, any anecdotes about any of the no wave filmmakers?
First of all, have
or
you
stuff?
seen Blank City?
No. Yes, I have.
You saw that documentary?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Blank City.
Black City.
Yeah.
Black.
So how did you feel about it? What were your thoughts of it?
Just like blank, just nothing. I felt nothing. I felt completely like. I felt like first I thought it was sickness. And then I was so sick I felt almost happy. And then I just felt numb after it,
Okay.
Just completely nothing.
Like trying to wrap up something that should have never been wrapped up in the first place?
No, I thought it was kind of like weirdly trying to translate that time into a modern package of it,
Right,
like in a sense repackaging it to make it like friendly to people who were born then.
Right. It's a little disconcerting in a way because
It isn't.
It's the commodification. I was telling Gabe, it's the first incarnation of, or the first commodification of that era of that kind of filmmaking that I've seen in motion picture form.
Yeah, and it was. Really
I know that it's been done. I personally haven't encountered it, but I know that it's been done in like MoMA retrospectives, things like that. And probably there's books out there, but I haven't seen it
for the mass for mass
in a
consumption.
documentary that's for mass consumption.
But I
and
think
it feels to me like what it's all about. I mean, the story it's just this repeating human story where you have the artist who first you have the bombed out city, and then the artists who like occupy the bombed out area. Then they do something really creative, and then the landlords come along and raise the rents.
Right.
And I feel like that's what the movie's about.
And then
in a way.
emblematically, they neuter and then gentrify the entire movement that came before it, and as if they were part of it. See that whole mass culture then comes and digests, or what it would say, it occupies it in a sense. And co-ops it, and then it makes that whole thing. Like for instance, they say a lot of that acting was just it was completely like punk rock shit, but it was bad acting. It was just like bad actors, And then in a sense, the way they framed it in that movie, it made it seem like it was on purpose. That kind of aloof, directionless kind of narrative is really the thing that they really tried for, and that's become this thing now because kids are imitating it now, because you can watch it on video, you can retrieve it. People imitate that, and I felt that there was like, oh no, it was totally on purpose, and in some ways,
I kind of disagree with you though, because
the thing I want to say is the thing that was on purpose was they didn't give a fuck. I'm
Right.
sorry, they didn't care.
Yeah.
They were literally the directors. They didn't care, and so if the actors were good or bad, on or not, it didn't matter as much because the whole package was good. I think that was a
Absolutely.
byproduct, not something that was completely thought out and planned.
No, but I think that the film talks about that, and I was just telling Gabe that air guitar, just like
Ergo air
ergo air
something you
guitar.
can't see that's happening right now. Okay.
I like to do it on my chest. Right?
No, I was just telling Gabe that the way that aesthetic works is through its economy, through its resourcefulness. That when filmmakers, and I was referring to horrors. I'm really repeating myself here, but that what these people did, and I'm sure it's true with the music too, that you use what you've got. You've got hardly anything, and you work with hardly anything, and that actually ends up being what's good, part of what's good about
Part of the energy.
thing. Like if you took a Richard Kern film or a Nick Zed film and then threw a $10,000 budget at it, it would kill the thing in a way. You would just snuff it out.
Or have Guy
with
Ritchie
money.
remake it.
That in a sense, what makes it good is the fact that it's like this. It's
Suffocated.
No, the opposite. That it's working with a tiny little bit, and it's making a lot with a little, as opposed to just like being suffocated by
see, that's-
money
but that's
and
just
having too much.
To take your point, I think you're right. But to take your point a little further, that entire situation of that post-war, these are like baby boomer types, and maybe a little the younger end of the baby boom people, and it's really they're in the heart of that in a sense. The post-war thing, the post-white flight thing, the post-industrial northeast, this entire thing that's happening, and all that kind of ennui that comes from it, all that nostalgia that's kind of just lingering, and all the dirtiness of the time, and all that confusion of the post-60s that's going on, this kind of like jadedness, but also hopefulness, and then this nihilism and everything. You really can't.
And the threat of nuclear war.
And the threat of nuclear war that hangs over everything.
Yeah.
The later in the Cold, because we're in the Cold War, you really can't fake. The thing is, you can imitate these people and you can try to encapsulate it, but you're always seeing through the prism of your moment. And so the prism of that moment is so decidedly different. You can't really. You can't really nutshell it in a sense. You can't really nutshell it and imitate it and try to see it and try to make it fit. Try to make it fit the modern context. You really have to see it in historical context to get it, And that's something that this culture is really bad at. What we redo is we constantly revise history to make it fit our present prism, for lack of a better thing. And so then what happens? We miss a lot of the opportunities to understand of what's really happening, and it becomes simply a fashion statement and really shallow in its process.
What's also interesting, I don't know if this is exactly along those lines, but like seeing all these people in their youth and how beautiful they're all so beautiful.
Really beautiful.
That's one of the tying things that they don't really talk about. That every one of them looks like a model.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Zed is phenomenal looking, even though he's like this dark,
dirty.
He's got sunken eyes and he looks so bad, but he looks so good in a
That
way.
being
Like,
looking
it's
bad,
that it's
yeah.
that
It's early heroin.
early heroin chic. It's early heroin chic, and they all have it. That's one of the things that they have in common.
And it's really a fall though.
But then to see them all older
Yeah.
is so depressing in a way. They're all older, and at the same time, they're all comfortable.
Yeah.
They're all in these comfortable environments. At least you can't really tell. You
Well, they're
know, like you
faking
don't
it as
see
if they
where.
are.
But then no, they're like there's IKEA shelving around them.
Yeah, right.
And they have this like.
That's comforting.
They're all
you?
little.
That looks like hell.
Well, it's the quote unquote comfort. Yeah, it's hell. It's like I can't believe it. Like these people
This
who are
manufactured
so,
hell. Yeah,
these people who are
exactly. I
so
agree.
gritty and badass now are in these little kind of comfort zones that are.
Well, if
so,
they were, I think if they were continuing, there obviously were those who continued on that trajectory, and they just didn't make the film.
yeah,
because they
a lot of
didn't
them
make- 'cause they didn't
died
make
of
it. They
AIDS,
didn't-
died
right, they didn't
died
live,
of drugs,
you know?
died of AIDS, died of other causes.
They couldn't show up, you know.
Yeah, and you can tell there's still a lot of there's still cool people, and they probably still do have pretty interesting existences, and they probably are still cutting edge in their own way. But there's something about aging
The
that's
victim.
just underneath it all. That's like, oh my god, it's so scary to see all these like badass people sort of like becoming older.
And the
And
vic-
not
and
being
the victim of their
and
own
in a not a
tacky
very
ways in the
dignified
Ray
way, like
Davies
it's
quote.
not dignified aging in
Yeah.
a way because maybe because
Aging
they
isn't really aging is pretty undignified. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
really is. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an indignant situation because you've got especially in a youth culture. There's no room for it. In a sense they don't allow it. So you have to make. And that's another weird thing. I felt almost there was this. By willfully, some of the members who were interviewed, some of the participants, willfully trying to make that hip for now, in a sense, defying aging, in a sense, because film lets you defy age in some level, but literally trying to repackage that only for the comfort of their own selves in the modern age, so they were relevant to this kind of shallow youthist kind of ageist time. I felt some of that was really horrifying. So I felt that some of that was really weird, and neutering of it all,
Yeah.
And so, but also, I got to think too, if you came from the post-Christian, a lot of kids were Catholic survivors,
But I mean, we're
survivors
not,
of
we're not
Judaism
that
and things.
much old. I mean, we were probably
We're
like
at the very end of it, though.
yeah, we're at the very end of it. They
We
were at
could
the
have been
beginning
part of it if we were precocious and we were born there, but we were in Milwaukee. But there was a similar version here, and there was somewhere in Cleveland, and similar different in Northeast. There was a lot of little scenes that were very much like that. But the fall from grace. The fall from grace in the 80s, when you lived through the 70s, the post 60s, the fall from grace, even on the East Coast, where the morals are a little more relaxed, from like suburbs to heroin, where now it's just ubiquitous. I mean, like everyone knows someone did heroin. There's like, those are real hard falls. Those are real heavy prices in Bohemiana to pay. You know what I mean? In a sense like that. And people don't. I don't think people realize like the degree to which people at that time, when the whole culture is moving towards up and more and money, to sacrifice that to be that obnoxious. I mean, I'm not saying woe with these, these Bohemians, but at the same time,
humanity.
but they were really romantic. There's a really heavy romance coming out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to just go back to like that. This is human beings. This is how we behave.
Yeah.
That we, they talk about how Picasso probably, at his time was kicked out or whatever for doing his thing. He'd get arrested and they were getting arrested for showing their films in certain places or whatever. And it's just, eventually this stuff and they talk about it. They say like, nowadays you watch Saw 3 or whatever. It doesn't even, it's like, their stuff it doesn't even hold a candle to how horrifying Saw 3 is, because it's become so, now it's just like taken for granted. You make these horrifying, terrifying, like violent films with blood gushing everywhere. That's normal. It's just normative.
It's all peyote and no ceremony. It's all, it doesn't mean anything because it's all for shock. It's imitative. It doesn't have a sacrifice being made. You know what I mean? There's nothing.
That's what you get down to.
There's nothing that you're going to lose for
There's
doing
nothing
it.
sacred that
and things aren't
exactly.
sacred.
And
because-
another young culture has to come along and make that real blood sacrifice, the real sacrifice of like,
probably coming.
like some of my friends may die doing this art.
Yeah.
And Blondie talked about that. She's like, people were literally dying
Well, Debbie Harry was
to make art.
Yeah, right.
What did I say, Blondie?
Blondie,
I
same
call
thing.
it-
Yeah, I call her.
So
Mink DeVille.
Yeah.
Willie DeVille.
one just to go a little off track here is this discussion is amazing. I could just sit here and listen to this forever.
But you need to interrupt it.
But
Yeah,
I do
and
need to
ruin
interrupt it.
Completely ruin our flow.
And Men in Black 3 was a film that we saw of sorts yesterday at the theater, at the Southgate Theater. And after our
Yeah, talk about cutting edge.
bizarre, after our, no, time travel. I want you to talk about, okay. So anyway, so we went to go see Men in Black 3 at the
Did you see
Southgate
Men in
Theater.
Black 3,
I didn't.
Paul? Okay.
And our adventure to try and just find the theater was in
Have
and
you
of
seen
itself
Men in Black at all?
No, wonderful. Go ahead.
was an adventure. And we first went into the Avengers, and we're sitting there, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure Men in Black 3 is made by Columbia. We're sitting there watching the logo, and Zav has his 7 accessories with him in the movie theater, and there he's all laid out. And all of a sudden I realize, I'm looking, I'm like, this is the Avengers. I've already seen this movie. God, oh, damn. And so we run out. And we realize that there's 3 auditoriums showing Men in Black 3, and they have the marquees all set up for tomorrow. So we walk down the hallway, and we go into another movie, and there's stuff blowing up, and there's alien ships everywhere, and there's lights, and there's people being killed, and there's aliens and lights, and just, crap that should never be in a movie, but it is. And, I hate to admit it, but I actually look forward to stuff like that once in a while.
And that's what we thought of Men in Black 3.
And then all of a sudden, I realize once I hear Liam Neeson's voice talking about battleships, I'm like, oh, wait, this is battle. Oh, God, oh, what are we doing? But I realized, well, maybe this is what Men in Black 3 is actually going to be like. And I said, how many crappy movies do we have to watch before we get to actually watch the crappy movie that we're going to review? How many other crappy movies do we have to rewatch again? So I said, how many limbs do we have to sacrifice to get to just to finish this movie? So we watched Men in Black 3. Decent, enjoyable. Not a horrible film, not a great film. For as far as a part 3 of a comedy sci-fi franchise filled with special effects and sort of half witty and sort of half thought out stereotypes. And
How could it be bad?
It really was not as bad as I was anticipating. It's a decent film that I found a little bit endearing, a little bit touching, with some decent gags and some decent moments, but it was just very sophomoric in just the most kind of eye-rolling way through a lot of it, and a lot of it was just kind of filler. Josh Brolin is very good as a younger version of Tommy Lee Jones, and that's what I want to touch on, is that the plot involves time travel. Will Smith has to go back to 1969 to save a younger Tommy Lee Jones. And that got me thinking about time travel movies and how contrived the plot device of time travel really is in movies and how often it's really used. Let's just go through a quick list. Somewhere in Time, Time Bandits, The Final Countdown, Time Cop, Hot Tub Time Machine, Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, Terminator, Terminator 2, 3, Terminator Redemption, La Jetée, which is maybe the good film on that list, Planet of the Apes, all of them. Bill and Ted's Excellent Whatever, The Time Machine and the remake, Just Visiting, The Doctor Who, both series, Peggy Sue Got Married, and 13 Going on 30. And this is just the tip. What is it about time? And okay, Peggy Sue Got Married is a good film. I will stand by that. But Back to the Future is not.
Did you put Groundhog Day in there?
Groundhog Day as
religion now.
Time as a device. But Back to the Future won all these science fiction awards, won all these awards, was like the audience favorite for years. It still is. Like, so many people listed as one of their favorite movies. It's not only is it not really credible science fiction because it's just such a dopey tale about a dopey kid doing dopey things with one silly situation after another. It won the Hugo Award in 1985, which Harlan Ellis
that just came out.
Back to the Future?
No, Hugo.
You're very silly. I like you. You're very cute.
Well, that's the point. But the point is, it almost relates back to what we were saying. Is that well, people are miserable, especially in the '80s. People were miserable. People are miserable, especially now, I should say. People are miserable in the time they live in. And they always want to escape. And one of the things, what if I could escape the time, the fate that I've been, given by being born when I was born? And nostalgia is very powerful, and the desire to change one's fate or destiny.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably just we always fantasize it. The question is, when is it something that you don't find a Shakespeare play where you travel
about time travel?
Yeah, it's a modern concept, and I think that has to do with the fact that that time changes so that our times are times of change.
Well, that's a really good point. I wonder if you could link it to photography, the recording and the freezing of history in some point, and some kind of sound recording or photography literally could freeze and capture time for the first time outside of a book. You could actually catch physical or oral time. Yeah. And I wonder if you could you'd probably H.G. Wells. I think you'd think a lot of it really is
Yeah.
a product of it. Well, if not the written word, at least the recorded word and
Yeah.
the
Product
recorded image.
of sort of daydreaming and imagination of really
through the
wondering
technology
how
that-
can
that
I alter my
captures
fate.
us.
Yeah.
But
Right,
also, I mean, we live in a time where fashion literally changes from season to season. Where in the Middle Ages or something, fashion didn't change; it stayed one way for generations and generations. The world did not change really; it stayed pretty much the same. When technology began to speed up, that's when we started to fantasize about traveling in time, I believe. I mean, I might be wrong, but I'm thinking that it must be since the turn of the century when technology just started to really make us constantly leave behind a previous era, an era that our parents lived in. I grew up fantasizing a lot about World War
being able
II.
to hold it and being able to simultaneously to hold it in some very physical form. Everybody could have a picture. A lot of people could afford a picture or a photo, or a lot of people could afford not to record sound so much later on, but a lot of people towards the middle of the 20th century. But prior to that, you could get a picture taken. You could actually freeze time. You could freeze yourself in time, and that was available to people. So it becomes more wholesale, and that's probably the attraction to a lot of this stuff because age is really a mystery. Aging is truly a mystery, but now it becomes
And it's
real.
a fear. And I mean, I've
thing.
often had fantasies about going back to high school and doing things right, and I think that's just something that a lot of people do, is that they fantasize about going back and doing your life right, or going back and fixing history, and that's what they do in Men in Black 3.
If I could just go back to high school one day and be the only person naked, that's the dream I keep having. That I hope that will come true one day. I'm just gonna do it. Fuck, I don't care.
Yeah.
Live it. How much time do you have? Just live it. Live it now.
It's really true. Wow.
But there's also something to do with the knowledge. I feel like that the brief history of time has changed a lot of people's perception of time, and so they talk a lot about they'll use like event horizon, and they'll talk about quantum. We're always bringing in the new knowledge that comes with science into the into fantasy,
Right.
and
the
so
blather that passes for the new knowledge.
that too. Yeah, I'm pretty good at the blather myself.
Me too.
But anyway, I've noticed that there's a lot of ideas that I only learned about maybe in the last decade that are popping up in films and in movies, where quantum physics. I didn't know anything about quantum physics when I was a kid growing up, even though my father taught quantum physics. But now quantum physics, just people talk about quanta and about like string theory and things like that in narrative. They throw it in a narrative
in mainstream
narratives.
Becomes a plot device.
It's become much more ubiquitous, and it takes a while for that stuff to filter down into the public. But how many people take a physics class, and then that filters into the narratives.
I think it's really interesting. Some of the most modern of these films about time travel are about time riddles. Getting lost in time and finding out where you were, and actually, as a viewer, sometimes the main character or the protagonist is lost in time, but the viewer has to find out where the protagonist is. Now, that's the newest, like Where's Waldo reality of like trying to find where this guy is in time in his own plot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And something that's happening. And I think that's probably due, or something at least partially due to the fact that you could build these monuments to yourself in film and photograph and recording, but at a certain point they become so those files become so engorged and so large, and the bandwidth of the present becomes so fat that it starts to cave in on itself. It starts to move. But there's too many pictures. There's too many films. Too
Right.
much of my baby's life is
information.
recorded and boring. It doesn't be. It starts to usurp present experience.
When we were watching this, when I was watching Blank City, one of the things that I thought, like just an image that came in my mind, was that it's like there's a net, and the net used to only catch very, very big fish like Hitchcock and John Ford, and that the size of the net keeps getting smaller and smaller and catching smaller and smaller fish. And like Nick Zed would be like a much smaller fish than an Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah, sure.
But he's on the net, he's on the global cinema radar. But you have to be someone like us to even know who Nick Zed is. But still, there's people like us all over the world.
People who haven't been born who will find out who Next It is because of
Right.
that recording of his name and posting of his name and listing of his name,
Right.
and perpetuation of his
Right,
work.
that
you know.
history will.
But
will
on a point with that, I just wanted to say that what happens is that, just like the eye, I don't know who is it? The eye looking at an object actually changes that object somewhat physically. There's the physical theories of this. The fact that just like a lot of these narratives early in the 80s, well, if you go back in time, you have to be careful because you changed one thing,
Right.
you'll change you'll warp the entire.
it's a paradox because
but
it doesn't
the paradox
work.
is it actually does happen to us consciously because the fact that we can record time and have so much of it recorded totally influences the present in ways
Right.
that it never did before.
Absolutely.
It warps it and warps our even our vision of the time. So
Right.
the fact that things are ephemeral kind of escapes us in a way
Right.
that we even age, that these things actually can't be kept alive in some weird way. There will be a weird distillation or a weird warping, and it will warp us to see them and to know them.
And actually, I
got a rockabilly show to go to. Do
and
that
we
right now.
gotta wrap it up too. There's actually
Kidding.
Yep,
I'm not
we
going
gotta
Onion
around.
go.
Breath Theater.
I'm just kidding.
Onion Breath Theater is here, and they're ready to start their show.
Smell
but,
them from here.
So
But we maybe we'll pick up a little bit where we left off next show.
Yep.
This was definitely one of our more off the cuff shows. For some reason, we're not as organized as usual. Gabe's bladder was. Gabe came on with a full bladder, and
I'm just doing my laundry.
and I. We didn't have a visiting filmmaker, but we did have a visiting
Launderer.
fellow
we did
person.
I mean,
and we did definitely have a
we
good
did our
discussion.
research and we got our notes and we had all our information. So
Yeah.
I think it was a good show. But yeah, we definitely
Plus, you guys look really
Definitely.
beautiful.
Oh,
like
you're
really
so
young
pretty.
and beautiful.
we
right
didn't get
now.
anywhere near talking about Men in Black
or
3,
time
but
travel, yeah.
but
that's fine.
but that's fine.
That's okay.
there's-
You go see it. You make up your own mind. You tell us if you like it.
Yeah.
Talk about the
Yeah,
Avengers
thank you.
again. I thought it was better
Oh.
than you guys thought it was. All right.
God. Okay. All right.
Of course, that's just
no,
in retrospect now.
No,
Okay.
don't ever make me sit through one. I was so mad when I
don't
realized
even
I was-
remember that
when I
movie.
remember and here's
I
another
just
thing.
remember, like, a
Zav only
tower.
Zav only fell
Iron
asleep
Man
for
is so
about
down to earth.
Zav only fell asleep through about, let's say, about 10 minutes of Men in Black 3. So I think this was a much better film than the Avengers in a lot of ways.
You missed the whole best parts of Avengers.
Okay.
Then. You don't
Yeah.
understand
Well,
the
no,
film.
okay.
Zav.
You should-
So we're gonna
No,
get going here, but this was Gabe and Zav's movie review show, My Dinner with Gabe, episode 7, and we'll see you next week. All right.
Bye, Gabe.
Thank you.